The sky over the East China Sea wasn't empty anymore. It roared. Engines, hundreds of them, cut through the clouds like a storm made of steel. At 10,000 feet, American carrier aircraft formed wave after wave, stretching beyond the horizon. Pilots tightened their grips. Radios crackled. Somewhere below, hidden beneath rising columns of smoke and anti-aircraft fire, was a single target. One ship, the largest battleship ever built, on deck. Japanese sailors looked up as the first dots appeared in the sky. They knew what was coming. They could hear it before they could fully see it. The low thunder dive bombers descending, the distant whine of torpedo planes skimming just above the sea. Then the sky opened. Flak exploded. Black bursts tearing through the air. The ocean erupted with near misses. And still, the aircraft kept coming. Wave after wave. Relentless. Unstoppable. This wasn't just an attack. It was an execution. Hundreds of aircraft, sent for one purpose: to destroy Japanese battleship Yamato, a symbol of power, a floating fortress, a weapon built to dominate oceans. And in a matter of hours, it would be hunted down, because by 1945, the rules of war had changed, and even the most powerful ship ever created was no longer safe. The formation tightened as they pushed forward. Above the clouds, sunlight flashed across wings and fuselages, rows of aircraft stretching endlessly, each one carrying bombs, torpedoes, and a single focused objective. Pilots scanned their instruments. Oxygen masks pressed tight against their faces. Sweat ran beneath flight helmets despite the cold at altitude. No one spoke much now. They all knew what waited below. A voice finally cut through the static. Target confirmed, bearing steady. Far beneath them, cutting through dark blue water, Japanese battleship Yamato moved forward like a steel island. Even from the air, she looked unreal, massive, armored, untouchable. White wakes trailed behind her as escort ships struggled to keep pace. On her decks, crews were already at battle stations. Gunners locked onto incoming dots in the sky. Officers barked orders. Rangefinders tracked altitude and speed. Every man aboard knew this moment would come, but not like this. Not with this many. Then the distance collapsed. The first American fighters dove lower, circling, watching, waiting for the perfect opening. Behind them, dive bombers adjusted altitude. Torpedo bombers dropped closer to the waves, engines roaring just above the surface. The trap was closing. Suddenly, enemy aircraft inbound. All batteries fire. Yamato erupted. Her anti-aircraft guns unleashed a wall of fire. Tracers streaked upward in bright arcs. Heavy shells burst into black clouds, filling the sky with lethal fragments. The air itself seemed to tear apart. One American plane vanished in an instant, caught in flak. Another spiraled, trailing smoke. But the formation didn't break. It couldn't. More aircraft poured in from every direction. Pilots pushed forward through explosions, adjusting their aim, holding steady despite the chaos. The ocean below flashed with impact splashes. The sky above churned with smoke and fire. And still, Yamato held her course. For a brief moment, she looked invincible, a fortress refusing to fall. But then, a dive bomber broke through. Straight down. No hesitation. Bomb released. Pull up, barely clearing the towering mast. Seconds later, the first explosion struck. A dull, heavy blast echoed across the water. Then another, and another. The attack had begun, and there was no turning back now, because this wasn't just another naval engagement. This was something far greater, a test of power, a clash between the old world and the new, and only one of them would survive. By the final months of World War II, Japan was desperate. The Imperial Navy, once dominant across the Pacific, had been reduced to scattered remnants. Aircraft carriers were gone. Fuel was scarce. Experienced pilots nearly wiped out. And yet, deep within what remained of their fleet, one giant still stood. The Yamato. At over 70,000 tons fully loaded, she wasn't just a battleship. She was a statement, armed with 9 massive 18.1-inch guns, each capable of firing shells weighing more than a small car. Yamato was designed for one purpose: to crush any enemy fleet that dared challenge Japan at sea. Her armor was immense, her firepower unmatched. her presence alone intimidating. But there was a problem. Yamato had been built for a different kind of war, a war of surface fleets, of battleships facing battleships, of guns versus guns. But by 1945, that war was over. Now, the sky ruled the ocean. American carrier groups had perfected a new kind of warfare, fast, coordinated, and devastating. Aircraft launched hundreds of miles away could strike with precision, overwhelming even the heaviest defenses. And unlike ships, they could keep coming. That's when Operation Tengo was conceived, a mission born not from strategy, but from desperation. Yamato was ordered on a one-way journey. No air cover, limited fuel, just enough to reach Okinawa, beach herself, and act as a stationary fortress until destroyed. It was, in essence, a suicide mission. On April 7, 1945, Yamato sailed into open waters, and the Americans were already watching. Reconnaissance aircraft spotted her almost immediately. Within hours, Task Force 58, one of the most powerful naval strike forces ever assembled, began launching aircraft. Not dozens, hundreds. F-6F Hellcat fighters, SB-2C Helldiver dive bombers, TBF Avenger torpedo bombers. They climbed into formation, engines roaring, weapons armed. The target, one ship. As the first wave approached, Yamato's radar detected them. Moments later, the horizon filled with aircraft. Then came the flak. Dozens of anti-aircraft guns erupted at once. Shells burst in the sky, forming deadly clouds of shrapnel. The air became a chaotic storm of explosions, smoke, and screaming engines. But the American pilots pushed through. Dive bombers peeled off first, plunging toward the deck at near vertical angles. Bombs released. Pull up. Escape through fire. Torpedo bombers followed, low and slow, skimming just above the waves. They lined up their runs, aiming for Yamato's sides where she was most vulnerable. One hit, then another, then more. The sea around Yamato churned violently as torpedoes struck her hull. Massive plumes of water shot skyward. The ship began to list. Still, she fought back. Her guns roared, massive blasts shaking the ocean. Secondary batteries fired relentlessly. Anti-aircraft crews worked without pause, firing until barrels glowed. But it wasn't enough, because the attacks didn't stop. They kept coming. Second wave, third wave, each more precise, more coordinated. From above, it looked like the sky itself was attacking. Inside Yamato, chaos spread. Compartments flooded. Fires raged. Communication lines broke down. Damage control teams struggled to contain the destruction, but the sheer scale of the assault overwhelmed them. More torpedoes slammed into her side. The list grew worse. Then came the fatal blows. A series of hits struck near her magazines. For a moment, everything went still. Then, a blinding flash. An explosion so massive it split the sky. Yamato erupted. A towering fireball rose thousands of feet into the air. Shock waves rippled across the sea. Debris rained down for miles. In seconds, the largest battleship ever built was gone. Over 3,000 crew members went down with her. From the American perspective, it was a decisive victory. From the Japanese side, it was the end of an era, because Yamato wasn't just a ship. She was proof of the belief that bigger guns, thicker armor, and sheer power could dominate war. But on that day, the truth became undeniable. Air power had changed everything. The sky over the East China Sea wasn't empty anymore. It roared. Engines, hundreds of them, cut through the clouds like a storm made of steel. At 10,000 feet, American carrier aircraft formed wave after wave, stretching beyond the horizon. Pilots tightened their grips. Radios crackled. Somewhere below, hidden beneath rising columns of smoke and anti-aircraft fire, was a single target. One ship, the largest battleship ever built. On deck, Japanese sailors looked up as the first dots appeared in the sky. They knew what was coming. They could hear it before they could fully see it. The low thunder of dive bombers descending, the distant whine of torpedo planes skimming just above the sea. Then the sky opened. Flak exploded. Black bursts tearing through the air. The ocean erupted with near misses. And still, the aircraft kept coming. Wave after wave. Relentless. Unstoppable. This wasn't just an attack. It was an execution. Hundreds of aircraft sent for one purpose: to destroy Japanese battleship Yamato, a symbol of power, a floating fortress, a weapon built to dominate oceans. And in a matter of hours, it would be hunted down, because by 1945, the rules of war had changed, and even the most powerful ship ever created was no longer safe. The pilots who returned that day didn't celebrate, not in the way victories are often imagined. There were no cheers echoing across the carrier decks, no triumphant speeches, just exhausted men climbing out of cockpits, their faces marked by smoke, tension, and something harder to define. They had completed their mission, but what they witnessed stayed with them. From miles away, many had seen it. The final explosion, a column of fire rising into the sky, so massive it looked unreal. Some described it as a volcano erupting from the sea. Others said it felt like the ocean itself had been torn open. For a moment, even the attacking aircraft pulled back, not out of fear, but because there was nothing left to strike. Below them, where Yamato once cut through the water, there was only debris, burning oil, scattered wreckage, and silence spreading outward across the waves. The radio chatter faded. Engines droned steadily, and one by one, the aircraft turned for home. Behind them, history had shifted, because what happened that day wasn't just the destruction of Japanese battleship Yamato. It was the final confirmation of something the war had been revealing for years. Power no longer belonged to the heaviest armor or the biggest guns. It belonged to reach, to coordination, to the ability to strike from beyond the horizon and disappear just as quickly. In the years that followed, navies around the world would adapt. Battleships, once the pride of every fleet, slowly faded into the background. Aircraft carriers became the new center of naval dominance. Strategy evolved. Technology advanced. But Yamato remained, not as a weapon, as a symbol, a reminder of the moment when one era ended and another began. Even today, resting deep beneath the sea, her story still carries weight, not because she was invincible, but because she wasn't. Because despite all her strength, all her size, all her power, she fell. And in that fall, she revealed a truth that reshaped warfare forever. That no matter how something becomes, there will always come a moment when the world changes around it. And when that moment comes, even giants disappear beneath the waves. For those who study war, Yamato's final moments are more than just a battle report. They're a turning point. Because everything about her, her size, her armor, her firepower, represented decades of naval thinking. The belief that dominance at sea came from building something bigger, stronger, impossible to destroy. And for a time, that belief held true. But on that day in April 1945, it met a new reality. One where distance no longer guaranteed safety. Where the enemy didn't need to see you to destroy you. From miles away, wave after wave of aircraft struck with precision, coordination, and overwhelming force. No warning broadside. No traditional duel. Just relentless pressure from above, until even the strongest defenses failed. And when Japanese battleship Yamato finally disappeared beneath the surface, it wasn't just a loss for Japan. It was a message to the entire world. The age of the battleship was ending, not with a gradual decline, but with a violent, undeniable conclusion. In the decade that followed, navies didn't forget. They adapted. Carriers became the new kings of the ocean. Air power became the deciding factor in nearly every major conflict at sea. Strategy shifted from armor and guns to speed, range, and control the skies. But Yamato's story still endures, not because she survived, but because she didn't. Because her fate reminds us that no matter how powerful something seems in its time, history always moves forward. And when it does, it doesn't ask for permission.